This is my $3,000 Overwatch 2 setup. I'll be going through every single item on this list in order from most expensive to least expensive and explaining if you should buy them, and if not, what should you get instead. So the first and most expensive item on this list is the ASUS ROG Swift 32-inch OLED monitor that I use. It runs at about $1,300 USD, and it's 4K 240 Hertz capable. Do I recommend that you get a monitor like this one? It also has HDR capabilities. My answer to that is going to be an unequivocal no. You do not need this monitor. Why is that? I have a different video where I outline my streaming setup and the reason why I went 4K HDR capable, but for just competitive gaming in Overwatch, you don't need a 4K monitor, and you definitely don't want an HDR capable monitor. The reason for that is 1440p is going to be much cheaper. I'm talking $150 for a monitor that is going to do everything honestly better than this monitor will, because first of all, the Overwatch 2 game runs at 1440p on the high-end Xbox consoles and on max settings anyway. You can output to a 4K display, but it's really running a 1440p resolution instead. So do you need a 4K HDR capable monitor for competitive Overwatch? No. In fact, 1440p monitors are going to run with less input latency and more consistently, which is actually what I'd recommend. I also don't think anyone actually wants to play competitive games in HDR, because in HDR, it disables a lot of the overdrive features that are going to boost your or decrease input latency on your in your game. But not only that, it's also harder on eye strain when you're playing on an HDR monitor, because the darks and the brights are much further apart in terms of the dynamic range that you're looking at, which actually dries out your eyes a lot faster, and it makes it harder to see things in the dark elements of the screen. Moving on now to the second most expensive item, that's going to be the Xbox Series X, which retails for about $600, and I recommend the Series X over something like the PlayStation, for example, because the Xbox Series X has slightly more performance, which is going to yield better results in game, less dropped frames. So for that reason, I do recommend it. But do you need an Xbox Series X to play Overwatch competitively, even at the leaderboard level? No, definitely not. You probably want to go for an Xbox Series S, which is much cheaper. It comes in at about $299. And if you get the Xbox Series S, you're still going to be able to get 120 FPS, but you don't even need a 1440p monitor. In fact, you can run that on a 1080p monitor and get really, really good looking gameplay, but also really smooth gameplay. So that's what I'd recommend for those of y'all looking to upgrade, but not necessarily get the highest end equipment. So the next most expensive item on this list is actually my Wi-Fi router. It's a TP-Link AX 300, and it retails for $425 USD. I don't recommend that you buy this Wi-Fi router, or really any expensive Wi-Fi router. The only thing that you need out of a Wi-Fi router is you need good performance and a wired Ethernet connection. So you can pick up a wired Ethernet cable that'll plug into your Xbox, just like this one. And if you get something like that, it's gonna cost you maybe $10, and I'm guessing you already have a Wi-Fi router. That is gonna improve your latency drastically and really up your game. You don't need a high-end Wi-Fi router, especially because features like Wi-Fi 6E, which this Wi-Fi router supports, aren't even compatible with the Xbox Series X, which I believe only supports up to Wi-Fi 6, if that. Furthermore, the Ethernet cable, the Ethernet ports on the Xbox Series X don't even support more than 1 gigabit per second. So if you have some crazy fast, like inner city Wi-Fi speeds, or internet speeds like 10 gigabit per second, you're not going to be able to pump that into an Xbox Series X. So don't even worry about upgrading your internet. Especially when you consider the fact that Overwatch 2 and other FPS games often don't favor better internet connections. I have a different video where I go into this in more depth, but game developers compensate for input latency by adding an element called desync, which makes it so that if you're on a slower internet connection, meaning more latency, maybe you have 200 ping instead of 50 ping, you're not necessarily at a disadvantage. In fact, in some cases you can be advantaged because of how the server handles the input that you give it. So go check out my other video for more details on that. But what you need to know right now is that your internet speed itself is not what's holding you back. If you're having internet problems, the issue is not the latency of your internet, it's actually the performance and consistency. So if you're getting things like packet loss or disconnects, that's definitely going to affect your game and cause you to lag. But simply having 200 ping in and of itself is never going to cause you to be at a disadvantage in an FPS game like Overwatch. Alright, so the next most expensive item on this list is actually going to be my controller, which is the Turtle Beach Stealth Ultra. It retails for $199, and I have found it has the best precision joysticks on the market. It has Hall effect sticks, which means that they're not prone to drifting, but also just something about the way they've implemented the resolution. It plays really, really nicely with the Overwatch dead zone settings such that there's almost no drift, but I can still have that dead zone all the way at 0 and have really, really good connection to the in-game control. So I highly, highly recommend this particular controller if you are going to upgrade. If you want to go for something more budget, I recommend the other Hall effects joysticks on the market, such as the GameSir G7 SE. That's a really good one that retails for, I want to say, about $45 on Amazon. So really good option if you don't want to go up to this premium line of $200 controllers. The only other controller that I would really endorse is the Xbox Elite Series 2. For those who don't really care about the joystick performance but care about buttons and having back paddles, that one is a really good option. The joysticks themselves are absolutely terrible on that, but everything else about the controller is top notch. I would even say is number one when it comes to the premium feel of the controller. For that type of price point, you really want a controller that's going to feel nice to hold. That being said, I don't recommend that you go with anything else in the $200 range, such as the Scuff Instinct Pro, because the features that they add are simply not competitive with the Xbox Elite Series 2, nor are they higher performance joysticks than something that you would get out of a stock Xbox controller. So the next most expensive item on my list is actually these in-ear monitors. I picked these up for about 80 bucks. They have a ton of balanced armature drivers in them, so they really have a ridiculously fine control over the wide dynamic range of audio that Overwatch spans. So I personally would recommend that if at all possible, you get a monitor that has an aux port in it, like this, and you plug in your headphones to the monitor directly. I'll explain more about that in just a second. But that'll give you much, much lower latency. I'm talking 200 milliseconds less in your audio sound cues than plugging into a controller directly, which is just a huge game changer. For PC players, they don't have to deal with that because they get instant latency-free audio either way. But this is definitely what I recommend if you want higher quality audio and lower latency in your audio. So why do I recommend in-ear monitors for gaming? Well, there's an expression that there's no such thing as gaming audio. There's just good audio. And that's true. There are all these headphones out there that market themselves as gaming headphones, and really all they are is just over-ear headphones that have a decent, and usually decent is a kind of an overstatement. They have a decent set of drivers that make sound okay. But the problem with any kind of headphones that are purchased for gaming is you're in that kind of $60 range, which for a set of over-ear headphones doesn't usually get you that premium sound that you really need to be able to distinguish enemies. In-ear monitors are designed to be cost-effective in the way that they're manufactured, and also really, really high quality when it comes to the sound that outputs, because in-ear monitors are designed for musicians, so good sound quality is a must in that field. So you don't have to get these in-ear monitors, the ones that I have. You can actually pick up a really, really good set of dynamic range in-ear monitors for about 45 bucks. I'll have a link to those in the description. You can even get one with a mic like these. And the good thing about in-ear monitors is they're pretty versatile. You can buy different cables, one that has a mic on it, one that doesn't. You can also buy like Bluetooth connectors that'll wrap around your ear so that you can use your in-ear monitors as if they were Bluetooth earbuds as well. So really good features there all around, and honestly, if you haven't tried in-ear monitors before, I highly recommend that you try them out because the sound quality there is most likely insane. It's usually better than anything that you've ever heard before if you've never tried that kind of level of quality. So the next item on this list is actually going to be a combination of two items. I have some JBL over-ear headphones and then a headphone amplifier to increase the volume here. So what I use this for is actually my in-game party chat, because there's kind of a problem with Xbox controllers and the way that they're implemented right now, which is that if you plug something in to this controller, it treats it as a headset. And that's the only way to get microphone input into your console, aside from a few really niche options such as a USB dongle for certain licensed Xbox headsets out there, which even those have their own implementation problems. But basically, if you plug anything into your controller, you're actually going to cause a increase in input latency even in your button presses, just because a headset is also running through the cable, and all of the inputs and data that's going through is actually going to be slowed down as a result. I'll put a link to some testing that's been done. The Photo Techie has done a lot of good testing around input latency on controllers, especially when it comes to headset plugged in or not plugged in. This controller actually performs relatively well as long as it's on a wired connection with the headset plugged in. It only adds about 1 frame of delay, but still, to me, to get the absolute least amount of input latency, what I recommend is, instead of plugging in a headset here, simply get the app, either the PlayStation or the Xbox app for your phone, pick up one of these hi-fi headphone amplifiers, as well as some over-ear headphones, and then you put your in-ear monitors in, you put your headphones in over your in-ear monitors, and now you've got a really low latency setup that's also going to give you clean audio for both your voice chat and your in-game audio. And I know that that particular portion of the setup is really extra, so if you don't want to do all of that, I highly recommend that instead of using a headset plugged into your remote, instead just plug in your headset directly to your monitor and then put a microphone of any kind. It can be just a small $5 mic that you get off of Amazon. Plug that into your controller, and that'll give you much better audio, because you'll have audio that doesn't have that extra 200 milliseconds of delay, but also you still have a in-game microphone that's going to help talk to your teammates. So a couple more bonus items that I actually don't consider very bonus at all. I think these are probably necessities, and even though they're the cheapest items on this list, they're the ones I most recommend because they're so cheap and so effective, and they always improve your gameplay almost instantly. And that's joystick extenders. So I recommend these. I'll have a link in the description, because these types of joystick extenders are very compatible. They'll work with any sticks. You can see I have one that's attached to my stock sticks, but then I have another that's attached to a Kontrol Freak, which is really good. And then I've added this extender on top of that. So it's a very long joystick on the right, which is absolutely going to up your game when it comes to accuracy and precision on aiming. So I highly recommend that you get some joystick extenders. Almost everyone should be playing with them because it's just simply logical. You know, the reason that joysticks are at such a disadvantage compared to PC players is because PC players have a whole mouse pad, whereas we just have this tiny little stick. But if you add length to the joystick, you're going to increase your leverage, increase the distance that you can control, and just simple physics is going to cause you to have more precision. So the last thing that I would recommend after you get joystick extenders is maybe just some grip tape, especially for this controller. Not really necessary on something like an Elite Series 2, but on this controller I just picked up a little bit of grip tape and added it to the buttons, including the front buttons here, because I've just found that to be definitely necessary for the back buttons, given that I play claw grip, which means I kind of hold the controller like this, which is not very comfortable and definitely needs extra tacky grip to be able to stay keep my fingers on those back two buttons. Whereas if you've seen an Elite Series 2, they're really, really comfortable to hold. You can put both fingers on both back paddles at the same time if you play with the same kind of claw grip that I do, and you're going to be really comfortable for playing for long, extended periods of time. So the very last item, and then I'll have one more bonus item after this that I recommend, is gamer grip. And this is honestly the very last thing that I would buy if you're going to buy anything at all. This helps. It's kind of like liquid chalk for those of you who have done bouldering or rock climbing. You put a little on your hands. It makes sure that your palms aren't sweaty and you don't slip on the controller at all. It does leave a little residue on the controller over time, but nothing that doesn't wipe off pretty easily. So it's a dry hand formula. Does it help? Yeah. Is it necessary? No. You can also just wipe your palms or turn the AC down so that you're not sweating. I actually just realized that I forgot the one item I would possibly recommend is a $35 fan that you can get from Amazon that hooks up to your Xbox Series X and actually increases the cooling. I don't know if they make one of these for the Xbox Series S, but if they do, I would probably recommend that you get it, because the S is often going to drop frames because it's working at max capacity. The Xbox Series X is often running the game at less than it could, just because of the way they've optimized and the amount of overhead that they've allowed for when you're running Spotify and streaming to Twitch and listening to party chat and all of that all at the same time with several games in the background. So I really wish that Xbox and Overwatch devs would work together to pump out a little more performance out of the Xbox Series X, because it definitely could handle more. But for now, that's what we have. I have this fan as a precaution because, if you keep the Xbox cool, it's going to last longer, it's going to prolong the life, but I wouldn't really recommend that you get one of these for your Xbox Series X unless they start to, add graphics customizations, maybe an ultra performance mode on console. So one final bonus tip that I would add, something that I do consider part of my setup, is DTS sound. I'm not sponsored by any of the products in this video. I should have mentioned that at the beginning, but DTS for Headphones X is absolutely worth trying. If you haven't tried it already, try the trial. I think it's 14 days free, and it really does change your game. It's going to give you spatial audio, which makes it so much easier to pinpoint enemies, especially when they're above or below you, compared to the stereo uncompressed or even Windows Sonic by default, which is also free. So I highly recommend DTS Headphone X on Xbox Series X. You don't want to go for Dolby Atmos for Overwatch, even though it sounds very immersive, and I do love the sound profile there. It's adding about 40 to 80 milliseconds of audio delay compared to DTS X, which is actually pretty huge. And not only that, but in many cases it goes up to about 200 milliseconds of delay. It's pretty drastic to use Dolby Atmos, so I don't recommend that. But I do recommend DTS Headphone X. I think it costs about $20 to buy the full thing, and then you'll have it on any of your Xbox consoles in the future. So that's all for the video. Let me know what you think of my setup, if there's anything that I should upgrade. If you think this is pay to win, just drop a comment that says pay to win in the comments of this YouTube video, and I will like your comment to make you feel better.